everybody. So like I said, I'm Andrew Blume. I've worked in ag tech for about 4 years now, designing greenhouses, indoor vertical farms, some cannabis farms as well. So I've looked at all sorts of crops at the indoor environment. When I first got into this, I was really starry-eyed and kind of naive about it, just thinking that the marketing out there was so aspirational about vertical farms. They would say things, oh, we reduce 95% water versus conventional agriculture, there's no pesticides, grow 365 days year-round with no climate risk, all these kinds of different stories that they would tell through a marketing lens. And so I got very pulled into that, and that attracted me to this business. And of course, there aren't major vertical farms in every city, and we've heard this marketing language for many years. So I started to learn about what are the challenges, why is this not a silver bullet? And that was an interesting journey as well, which took me to many different places, including moderating a panel with the 3 largest failed vertical farms in North America, right? So between those 3 vertical farms, they lost about $45 million between the 3 of them. And I did this post-mortem discussion with them, which is on YouTube. It's an hour-and-a-half long discussion where we really get into it. So I encourage you all to look beyond the marketing language and to really dive in before you and research what it is that is happening in this industry and what it is that we can actually achieve with it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but we can definitely have a much longer discussion about it, and I encourage you to watch that YouTube video. I think I have some slides here. I don't have a clicker, so I don't even remember. I made this presentation a little bit ago. But yeah, so along that journey, I visited many vertical farms and helped design many of them. And I share this slide just to say that I'm not a botanist, I'm not a plant scientist, I'm not a structural engineer or an ecologist or many of your professions. I'm a business major. That's how I got into this. And so when I look at it through the lens of how can we profitably fit this in with our economy. And what I found was that vertical farms, it's really a challenge. And so I really dove into the financial models, and as you mentioned, I worked with many clients like Coca-Cola and St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, and second largest utility company in the country, and the mayor's office of Atlanta. And they were all asking, how can we make this profitable? And so after studying and consulting for all of those clients, I think I finally came up with a way to do it, which I think the next slide is about, if I remember. Yeah, so what we do now, it's called inHouse produce, and we grow food right where people eat it, right in the dining area of restaurants, right? So in this first iteration, we're a very young company. We're actually growing in the dining area of a celebrity chef-owned restaurant. It's a fine dining restaurant, tasting menu only, 21 courses, and $185 a night, right? So how does that fit in with the economy? Well, they can afford it for now. So right now, we're selling to rich people, but the idea is to productize it and obviate out the labor so that it can be more affordable and more accessible to other restaurants. And if you go to the next slide, I think I talk, I guess they're not in the order I thought they were in, but here's some of the environmental benefits that I mentioned earlier that you see in all of standard kind of vertical farming marketing language. And of course we get all of that. The other advantage that we get is one that is probably pretty important and relevant to everybody in this room, which is no plastic packaging. Because we just grow food right where people eat it. And if you grow food where people eat it, you don't have to have this petroleum-based packaging. And so that's nice. But it's also nice from an economic point of view, because if you imagine a head of lettuce that sells for $1 and you're spending 30 cents on your plastic clamshell, that doesn't really make economic sense. Also, no food waste. Microgreens are a highly perishable product, and they're very expensive. So if we can eliminate food waste, which certainly we can, because we're not going through a whole supply chain with refrigerated shipping. We're just growing food where people eat it, and it's alive until the chef decides, I want to harvest this and serve this dish. So, but on the next slide, I think I talked. Here's a little bit more about the supply chain part and how we can compete with conventional agriculture, with indoor vertical farms, and with greenhouses, right? Because if you think about microgreens, but also many other categories of vegetables, they're actually all typically about 90 to 95% water. Cucumbers, tomatoes, lettuce, all of these are 90+% water, right? So if you think about what is a farm actually doing, is they're growing this produce, harvesting it, which makes it perishable, meaning it's going to go bad at some point along the supply chain. And actually, it's basically just vitamin water, is what they're putting on a refrigerated truck and shipping into the city and spending a lot of money at distribution centers. And on that last mile of distribution, that's typically 28% of the shipping cost, sometimes up to 40%. And so that doesn't really make sense when seeds, on the other hand, are lightweight, they're compact, and most importantly, they're shelf stable. So we just tap into the fresh water in the municipal supply and make a much more efficient supply chain with what we do. And you get the added benefit of a lush interior design piece that you want to show to your kids, to your grandkids, to reconnect people with where their food comes from. They can see where it grows, and it makes you feel good about what you're eating. So that's part of what we do, is create this supply chain efficiency. Is there another slide? Let's see. Yeah, there's a bunch of customer benefits to it as well. Here's a fun one we did at Beta Space, which was this kind of weird investor party in the desert. It was on the front page of the LA Times. So we had to make it look cool with fiber optics and whatever. But yeah, so see, these are some of the things we do, and definitely making it look cool, make it Instagrammable. We're here on a college campus. Who has Instagram? Can I just ask, what's next? What's coming after Instagram, right? Because that's what we want to do. We want to make farming cool. And I don't know, I'm a millennial, some Gen Z people in the room here. If you know what's coming next after Instagram, that's what I need to know, because we want to make this cool. We want to make agriculture something people want to talk about on their social media. And of course, nutrition as well. Up to 40 times the nutritional content in microgreens, because that nutrition is bioavailable when they're in that soft tissue phase. And so if we look at the health system, there's a lot of problems with it. I don't know how to fix those, but I do know that a plant-based diet is good. And if I can get some kids to see a vegetable, if kids see it, they eat it, they see it growing, and so we like to do that as well. Let's see, what else do we got on here? Next slide. Yeah, so I guess the last thing I want to say, I mean, I did talk about economics a little bit, but when I was designing vertical farms, I found that about 40% of the costs came from energy, water, real estate. With our model, we don't have any of those costs because we just shift those right to the customer. We're growing on site. The restaurant pays for their own energy, they pay for their own water, they pay for their own real estate. We don't rent it. Then we don't pay for distribution because we're just growing it right there. We don't pay for packaging. We don't pay for processing labor because the chef is the processing labor. And so he or she gets to create this novel farm-to-table experience, elevate their cuisine, make the diners feel good, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So I talked a lot about the in-house produce model today, but on the panel I'll be talking more about indoor farming, vertical farming, and greenhouses. So thank you all very much.